Fellow traders, 'tis I, the Rumpled One, coming to you on Tuesday, July the 15th. The year's 2025. Let's talk trading. The art of the trade with Walmal. These videos are for educational purposes only. Your results may differ from mine and Walmal's. As always, have risk management in place so you never lose more than you're willing to lose on any one single trade or during any one single trading session. Walmall. I had a trader that said we don't answer questions in depth. So I went back through the comments here, and I'm thinking maybe this is why this trader said it. He put in a comment, a long comment. He says, unfortunately, you excluded from the outset any discussion of trades that go into the red immediately after entry. How would you handle such scenarios? What would you focus on when deciding whether to let a trade run to give it enough room to breathe? And where do you see the trade-off between allowing enough space for price development and the risk of incurring significant losses, which might only be offset by many small profit trades? You know, my initial reaction to that is, you know how when you're in a class and there's always that one person that thinks they know more than the teacher. But, I'm not trying to be dismissive, but it's almost like they're trying to overcomplicate something and sound, educated or smart, as opposed to just grasping the simplicity of the lesson. Um, but just to give Walmart credit, he said, he speaks about this all the time, but he said, this is trading's more like an art, the art of the trade. So he's the one that came up with that heading. So Walmart, Walmart. Do you want to respond to the trader?
Yeah, Actually, of course I went and stole the idea of that title from the current president of the United States with his famous book, the Art of the Deal. But here's what I mean by the art of the trade. And I understand where this trade is coming from, and we all fight that because the reality is I pull the trigger, I'm always in the red. Okay, there's not a single time that I can think of in recent history where I went and literally pressed the buy button or pressed the sell button and I wasn't underwater. And I'm underwater for a couple of reasons. I'm underwater because of the commission I got to pay for the trade. I'm underwater because of the spread that I had to go and pay. Because let's be honest, people. When you have a spread, you're paying for that because you have to go and have that trade go in your direction that many points or pips or whatever your spread may be before you're at break even. So you paid for that, whether you like it or not. It's a form of payment, and so you are immediately in red. So you got to understand that that's what happens. So if you're getting upset because you go and pull the trigger and you're in red, well, don't worry about it.
No,
That's the
I think
everybody's in red.
I think what he's asking is it's like what happens to me when I'm Mr. Inflection. I hit the trade
Yeah,
and it's like, let's just say, in this current flip flop, I mean, it just took off, but I mean it could just have easily ran, 3 pips against me just as soon as I enter, and that's happened more
right,
than once. So I think
right,
that's what they're getting at. And it's a
yeah,
fair, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I was going to say, yeah, I understand that, but understand that at the same time, you're going to be underwater no matter what. But you're right. It just seems like so often you go and pull the trigger, and it doesn't just go and put you in that normal situation of being underwater, but it goes against you. You took a trade and it went the wrong direction, or so it seems. I mean, uh, I don't know what happened on the candle one of the current 1 minute chart, but more times than not, what will happen is that you go and enter the trade, and if you notice, there's a little tail on that thing. Not very big, but it's a tail of two or three points. And if you're already paying, 4 or 5 points, in spread and another, 4 points in commission. Well, now on you look at the trade report it's now saying, hey, you're down an entire pip and a half, and so that it can be devastating to your psyche. Okay, so fine, you're going to be in that situation. What do we do? And that's where the art comes into it, because I think that trader was asking, how do you know when you just go and jump out? How do you know when you go and stay? How do you know when that it's you just got to give it enough time for it to develop? And that's where the art comes in all of this, because yes, we go and run the statistics. Okay, why do we go and take a trade like a rat reversal trade? Why do we take that? Well, we take that because when we run the statistics, we see that the statistics are in our favor, and we will go and make money on these type of trades. I don't know what the numbers are. Kira, you could go and answer that question better than I could. But the statistics have been run. You know that they over a long period of time, you will go make money on it. Okay, great. That's the reason why we took the trade. Now, does that mean it works out every time? No, it doesn't. And you have to sit down and you have to go and figure out you have to sit down and figure out, okay, what do I do? If this thing goes against me, before you even pull the trigger in terms of taking the trade, what do I do? What am I going to do if this thing goes against me 2-3 pips? Am I immediately going to get out of this trade, or am I going to give it some room to develop? And you should have that game plan, already in your mind. Well, how do you go? Of course, the next obvious question: how do you develop that game plan? Well, there's a number of ways that you do it. Number one, what is my bias? If my bias for the rest of the day is for this thing, the pound dollar, because it's just turned red, about an hour ago, the day just turned red, but it was actually pretty green for most of the day. But now my bias is now saying this thing's going short. Well, I may not want to right away immediately want to go and take long trades, but I got a trade that just developed on the screen. So do I want to take it? You know what? I'm going to take it. Well, maybe I'm sitting there saying, you know what? If I don't get my pips right away on this thing, my inclination is get out of the trade. Just get out of it. Take the small loss. But on the other hand, if it was a situation where all my biases are pointing me in the other direction and saying, you know what, this thing is going to go. Yes, it's taking a breath right now. It's going and it's developing right now. Well, maybe I'm willing to go and stick it out. And then the question is, here's the art part. Over time, with seat time, okay, what happens is I think you develop you develop this inclination as to when you let things go and when you go and jump out. And I know that's a wishy-washy answer, but for me anyway, it's the truth of the matter. Okay, but the reality is I sit there, and because I have enough seat time, I can sit there and say, this is going to go. It's going to go. I'm not sure when it's going to go, but it's going to go. And I'm willing to sit it out. Another time you say, you know what? It ain't ready to go yet. I'm out of here. And I just jump out. And that's the part of the art part of it, because with time you just learn to go and be able to sniff that out. It's sort of like I'm gonna turn this into a relationship 101. Okay, and they say this about married people or people who are in long-term relationships. When they've been in a long-term relationship 5, 10, 15, 20 years, or even longer, something occurs and both people in a relationship, go and respond with the exact same answer, and it's just because each person knows the other person so well that they're able to even answer for them. And of course, that can be annoying. That's another set of problems. but but the point is, I've been married now for almost 40 years. Okay, and here's the reality. I know what my wife is going to say about certain situations before she does, okay? Because I got to think through that, whereas my wife just does it, instinctively, and it's just so true. I mean, I've seen her, it's type of thing. Like we had a problem with a particular doctor over the last week, and I knew exactly what she was going to do, and so like some of the things that they weren't best of decisions. So I went to my wife and said, hey, you really don't want to go and do that. That's going to cause a major problem because of this, and this. And she said, how'd you know I was going to do that? I married you for 40 years. I've known you forever. Well, guess what? I'm married to the pound dollar. And it's type of thing when I'll jump into a trade because my statistics tell me, my indicators tell me, my everything tells me go long. Okay, and I jump in, and all of a sudden the pound goes and does something, and it's sort of like it just naturally clicks, and it's sort of like because again I've got to know that pair so well that my inclination is, oh, get out. This thing's going to tank. And, I know Tiro, you've seen me do that on a number of occasions where I said I'm getting out now, and then a few minutes later you'll go and say, oh, it's a good thing you did that, huh? Because it'll all of a sudden drop, 10 pips, 20 pips against me very, very quickly for whatever reason. And of course, you make mistakes with that too. There have been times, like even earlier today, where I jumped out of the trade and you said, oh, you wish you would have stayed in that trade. Yeah, it would have been nice to get those extra pips. I didn't, but that's okay too. But
Yeah.
that's my, the long answer, I
Yeah.
guess.
Well, see, that
Got it.
was,
Yeah.
and I was saying, we should have had that discussion on the video because I asked you, hey, why didn't you take half off and let the other half ride? And then you replied,
Yeah, and because in my experience, every time I go and do that, I get not that I get burned. It's more of I don't get any benefit for it. So I just go and say this is the point where I say I get out, you know, and I just take my pips and I walk away and say, okay, I'm happy. I can only eat 10 shrimp right now. I'm taking my 10 shrimp and I'm gonna go eat it and be happy with it, And whereas when I go and take half off, it just seems so often that I take the half off, and I wind up getting out at the same time with the other half. I wind up getting out at the same exact place that I would have if I just went and took my shrimp at that point in time. So it's sort of like, why should I be in a trade, and being exhausted emotionally when the benefit just doesn't seem to be there for me?
yeah,
And so that's my ration. That's why I do what I do.
yeah. And I'm looking at the chart here, the 1 minute pound, and it came down and it started to form a range. And I see a flip-flop box trade. Actually, I think the first one I really saw was, well, there was one here, that and then, of course, if I would have taken that, it would have reversed on me. And then there was another one here that did the same. So that's two inflections. And there's one here that went up. And then it drops from that point. It dropped way down here. But it's one of those things where if you've got enough, gunpowder, and you just took every one of these little flip flops, right when it's at the level right here, probably you'd be out. And you'd be out with a profit. Now, the question is, you know, and why we can't answer it for the trader that posed the question is, I don't know your account size. I don't know how adverse you are to risk. I don't know what your pain point is where if you're down by, $100, it's going to make you cry versus, if you're down by $1,000, that's no, it's like, so what? It's just trading. So you might be trading in such a manner that your position size won't allow for this. So, and that's part of the art. You've got to take how much money you have, how much you're willing to lose, at what size do you want to trade, because you might want to get it. You might want the ability to actually have 10 separate deals going at the same time, so you can trade your way out of a mess. Because see right here what price is doing, it's almost getting back to that point, where I mentioned that would have been the first flip-flop box trade that maybe I would have taken. And there's things here. It's like, hey, we broke the daily low, previous day's low here, um, and it's like, why do you want to go against that? You got to let that trade develop. So, trader, I hope we answered your questions, and I know, I don't really think you were trying to be that one person, but that was just my knee-jerk reaction. So, the art of the trade, that's just another way of saying it's not what you trade, it's how you trade it. So go out there and drain the banks. This is the Rumpled One, over and out.